That's
Th-
okay.
Thanks for letting me record. Um,
That's no problem.
so let me just start out, and I'll tell you the basics of the interview, and then we'll get into the questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the basic idea is that I'm trying to understand the relational dynamics of the workshop artists. So
Okay.
essentially understand how all the different stakeholders involved in the Dota 2 community and in the community of workshop artists, how they all
Mm-hmm.
function together. And essentially, you will be kept completely anonymous in the process, and it's all about your opinion. So elaborate as
Okay.
much as you want. Okay. And there are no right or wrong answers. Um,
Cool.
so let me start with the first question. Um, the first question is, how would you describe the need you're fulfilling for Dota 2?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Sorry, my mic. How would you describe the need you're fulfilling for Dota 2?
The needs you're fulfilling?
The
Is that what you
need
mean?
you are fulfilling.
Oh, in terms of like what Dota 2 needs? I guess, um, so it's pretty much just providing, I guess, additional um, means for people to purchase skins and items within Dota 2 aside from the ones that Valve traditionally creates themselves.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, I think, yeah.
And specifically for the Dota 2 community, what need are you fulfilling for them?
Um, I guess it's kind of hard to say. I think it's providing them a means to like spend money on the game. Um, it's kind of weird because I think if you just look at like it kind of changes over time. Like I think nowadays it's giving them reasons to try and support the major tournament and the international. For recently, I think that's pretty much where a lot of the cosmetic items have gone. Um, they're into those. In the past, it was, providing the items and sets that people can buy to support tournaments, like third-party tournaments, but they've kind of gone on the wayside. Um, and yeah, I guess it's just kind of, providing people the ability to, customize their character and make themselves look better, I guess.
Okay, great. And how would you describe the need you're fulfilling for Valve in particular?
Um, Yeah. So with Valve, it's very it's kind of complicated. So I guess the need they have is to have these kind of things for sale that generate them an income. I guess they generate us an income too, but predominantly it's providing them with the means of generating income for tournaments or themselves in terms of like a prize pool. So that's I would say that's probably the main thing the sets do for them is it may even I don't know like it may even internally kind of take some stress off their artists if they know that we're providing this kind of stuff. But I don't really know 100% if that's true or not.
Okay, great. Thanks. So the next sort of set of questions are around trust within
Yep.
within these things. So how would you describe the nature of the trust that you have for the greater Dota 2 community?
Um, yeah, it's I think for the greater Dota 2 community, aside from just the workshop people, um, like I trust that when I put things on the workshop, well, I kind of hope that they will look at them and kind of respect the amount of work that's gone into them. Doesn't always happen like that, unfortunately. Um, but I think I just trust that I can put this stuff out there and have people kind of respect the work that I've done. Yeah.
Okay, well, the way you've sort of described trust there is very much in terms of almost like you have faith that they will do it, but do you
Yeah,
actually
kind
do,
of.
do you actually trust them?
Um, it's kind of hard. So often, sometimes I don't trust the greater Dota 2 community to um, make the decisions based on a lot of the work that goes into it. I have to admit, you do lose a bit of trust because often the Dota 2 community kind of does things on face value or based on the name of the artist. Like I pretty much firmly believe that. I think there's a lot of sets and things that are made that if they were made by a lesser known artist kind of just get swept under the rug and people don't notice them. But if they're made by someone who's, quite a famous personality or a name, they, arbitrarily get a lot more attention. Um, so in that respect, it is hard to kind of it's hard to kind of trust the community to make a decision, because they kind of just they look for one specific thing when, there's a lot more kind of work that goes into making a set or just an item.
Okay, thanks. That's very interesting. So how would you describe the trust that you have in the community of content contributors or the other workshop artists?
Um, yeah, so I trust them to give a lot of honest feedback, I think. But it is a very kind of odd community, in that, in a sense, you are working together to better a video game. So much like a traditional studio, like any studio in the world would, except, you know, there is, I think it's kind of, the last few months it's kind of died down, but, a year or two ago, it was a pretty um, dog eat dog. It was a pretty vicious kind of community, um, in the sense that, it was good to provide feedback and help people out, but there was this kind of undercurrent of, well, if I help these people, then that kind of takes away my chances of earning an income if their stuff is really good and, mine doesn't get in, which is kind of a bit unhealthy. Um, but yeah, like there was like in terms of like the skills of the artist and what they do, yeah, I do kind of trust their knowledge and their feedback. But I think there's a whole bunch of different issues that maybe we can get onto later with the Dota 2 workshop community.
Okay. I mean, we can always skip questions later. I mean, do you want to elaborate a
Yeah.
bit on those issues?
Yeah, sure. So like for the most part, I've been kind of like I don't do this as a full-time job. Like I just kind of do it when I have spare time. So because of that, I kind of just take a back seat to most of the kind of workshop stuff that goes on. So I just kind of do my own thing and don't really get involved in it. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of you know there was a lot of drama several years ago with people getting angry at other people. This kind of hint of favoritism from Valve, and that gets hard to kind of trust some artists when you think, well, you get inside information, or you know about things before other people do, or you're invited to work on special projects the rest of us don't aren't allowed to work on or don't know about. So it's a bit of an uneven playing field there. Like I get what the concept was to make it this, even playing field for all contributors, but it didn't really pan out that way. So it did get a bit crazy. I'd probably say a year or two ago, but I think it's kind of very much calmed down now in the fact that Valve don't add nearly as many items or sets as they used to. It's very staggered now, so kind of it's a bit calmer now. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so that, I mean, that kind of brings us to the next question: is how would you describe your trust in Valve?
Yeah. I don't know. I like I don't really have much. I haven't in the past have a lot of contact with Valve. Um, I have in some respects. I've had them, kind of ask me to rework several things that for various reasons weren't acceptable to them. So I've reworked them and then just heard no feedback at all. Um, and I think, I have to give probably some, um, allowances to Valve that I think probably the workshop grew a lot faster than they were kind of anticipating it to grow. Um, but yeah, like I think it's not the fact that I don't trust Valve. It's just that they're pretty non-communicative. They don't really talk a lot. Um, so, you don't, it's hard to kind of trust a wall. There's not really much on the other side there that's getting back to you. So, that's what I mean. I did my own thing and just kind of plodded along, and, that pretty much how it went for me. I didn't really have the need to contact Valve that often.
Okay. So sort of moving on more to the community or the Dota 2 community.
Yep.
Do you believe that the Dota 2 community's role is important in your creation process?
Yeah, totally. I think it is. I I rely a decent amount on the community. I like to I actively watch Dota 2. I don't play as much as I used to anymore. Um, but I watch the international. I watch the tournaments. I take note of what heroes the community is interested in to think about what heroes would be good to make sets for. I read Reddit, the Dota 2 subreddit, so I watch the community. I often, if there's another set that's gotten feedback on Reddit, then I kind of take note of that and kind of work it into my own, um, you know, the way that I do things. But yeah, I think the community is valuable to a degree. Sometimes, once it gets to a certain point about, artistic kind of questions, then you have to turn to the more specific workshop community rather than just the wider Dota 2 community.
Okay, so sort of when you're talking about the community and popular heroes, how does that interplay with the meta?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of the same thing. So like if the meta is, you know, these 5 or 10 heroes, then you have to consider, you know, those 5 or 10 heroes are going to be very popular on the workshop. I tend to go the opposite way. I like to make sets for heroes who haven't gotten a lot of love because I feel like you get a lot more kind of respect from the community if you kind of do something that they weren't expecting. Um, or I kind of just do hero sets for heroes that I like in general. But yeah, I kind of see what the community's interested in. It kind of, in some ways, it's hard because I know the community gives a lot of feedback about what they would like, but as a workshop artist, you're not able to provide that because there's just not the several of the things that they want. There's nothing in place that allows you to provide things for those heroes. So we kind of just can't really help them, unfortunately.
So by things in place, do you mean technical issues or technical problems with
Yes.
modeling?
Yeah, so there's a list of heroes that are broken down to enable you to add to make sets for those heroes. Several of them have not been added to that list ever since they were released into the game. So there's heroes that are quite old. Whether or not internally within Valve, there's things going on to allow them. We haven't really heard. It was probably about 2 or 3 years ago. There were 2 emails that circulated that were about how Valve would like the workshop artists to enable those heroes to be edited in the workshop. So they emailed a whole bunch of people. I was part of those emails. How they would like to, what would the workshop artists like to do. But as far as I know, those are the only 2 emails that ever happened in the past 3 or 4 years. So I thought that was kind of the start of a new thing, but unfortunately, that was pretty much it.
Okay. Um, so do you value the sort of community relationships that you have, or how do you value
Uh,
them in terms
yeah,
of the
I
greater
think,
Dota 2 community? Sorry.
yeah, I think, like, I do value the relationships. I'm probably, like, I don't, like I said, I'm not like a well-known name, so I think I don't kind of, and that's kind of nice. It means that I don't feel the pressure of like everything you make. People have expectations that it has to be better than your last famous set. I can kind of just do whatever I want. I think for some of the workshop artists who are quite well known, there may be this kind of expectation that everything they do is gold, doesn't always work out that way, unfortunately. So, I do value it, but I don't really have this kind of image that I'm trying to cultivate or anything like that. So I don't really take it too seriously.
Okay, and do you believe that the way that the Great Dota 2 community communicates, or the way that information is shared, is it effective?
Um, yeah, I guess so. Like, I think it's kind of hard to separate effective feedback from just general spam. Um, and I think that kind of comes down to the way that the actual workshop itself functions within Steam. There's not a really like I think I would much rather like some sort of better medium to get feedback from people. But that just kind of that's a technical issue as well. Doesn't really nothing's really happened there for the past few years. So I do take into account some of the feedback that I get. Um, Sometimes I put it in Google Translate and find out that it's pretty mean, but it doesn't really bother me that much. So yeah.
Okay, well, that sort of like leads on to the next question: is do you believe that the community negatively affects your work, and how?
Um, Sometimes, yeah, I will admit sometimes it kind of negatively affects you. So it's you can work, you know, for me because I have another job, so whenever I can, so I can work for a month or so on and off on something, be quite proud of it and put it up there, and then just get absolutely slaughtered in the votes and the comments and stuff. And yeah, it kind of sucks. You beat yourself up a little bit, but you can't get too down on yourself. Um, I think there's a lot of cases where the community doesn't like things for various reasons, whether or not it's good quality. It could just be that they don't want any more sets for that hero, or maybe you put up a set unbeknownst to you, another workshop artist worked on a set with a similar theme and already put it on the workshop 2 days before you, and the stars align, and yours is the one that they take their anger out on. So I think in terms of like, has negative feedback ever made me alter the way I do things? Not really. I much prefer positive feedback or constructive feedback, I guess. But yeah, I'll admit, when you spend a lot of time on something and you're quite proud of it, but the community kind of rips you to shreds for it, you kind of get a bit down for a couple of hours or so.
Okay, and when specifically talking about the community of content contributors or other workshop artists, do you
hmm
believe that they play an important role in your creative process, and how?
Yeah, I'd say they really do. I think it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of that community it has kind of faded away recently, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Valve has changed the distribution of items. So we went from single items, which is so. This I'll just kind of clarify that the when the workshop first came out, that's when I did a lot of stuff. That's probably when I was most successful. Um, Now that then we transition from that to this kind of staggered release and tournament releases, and I think the tournament where there was kind of third party tournaments, it was a lot of like who not how good your stuff is. So if you knew if you knew the tournament organizers, you could get in with them and get your stuff distributed. And because I wasn't really interested in you know like it wasn't my full time job, I didn't really put that much effort into doing that, and that kind of let me down a little bit. But even now, the fact that sets don't come out very often, they come out really rarely. I think the greater workshop community has quietened down a lot. I know a lot of artists have kind of gone on to do bigger and better things, and then every time a major is coming around, they'll come out of the woodwork and make one or two things, and then go back to their other job. The Polycount Dota 2 forum is relatively dead these days. Not much goes on there at all. It's pretty much just the Skype group. I think there's a pretty good Russian Dota 2 workshop community going on Discord, but for the most part, the Skype chat is pretty much it. And yeah, that's the community has quietened down a lot in the last year or so.
Okay. So how do you value these relationships with your fellow workshop artists?
Yeah, I there's only a couple of relationships with workshop artists that I really value. In terms of like, specific one-on-one relationship. In terms of the actual community itself, yeah, it's a kind of unique community in that there's always someone there that you can ask for feedback on. Everyone is always willing to give feedback. You have a couple of personalities who are always willing to give pretty strong critical feedback, which is always nice. And I think the fact that it kind of still exists to that extent is really good. I think if there was no kind of way for the community to get in touch with each other, I don't think that Dota 2 Workshop would be nearly as good as it is now. I think the fact that these people kind of um, you know stick together, and we can share what we're working on and talk to each other. It is kind of cool. So I do value that. Um, I would say more broadly in terms of the Dota 2 workshop community.
Okay, and do you believe that the way you guys share information is effective?
Um, yeah, I think so. Like, I much preferred it when we were on the Dota 2 Polycount forum as opposed to the Skype chat. I really don't like Skype as a messaging solution. You will wake up in the morning and there's 800, 600 messages there, and you've missed a lot of like what's gone on, and the way Skype kind of does things is a bit annoying. So I think, the way when we had it on the forum was much better, but, that just kind of died out. There's not a lot of moderation going on there anymore. So, I think the Skype chat is kind of cool. You can just kind of post anything up there and get feedback from, you know, people all over the world, which is kind of unique. It's kind of cool the fact that you can do that. But yeah, I think I definitely prefer the forum over Skype, unfortunately.
Okay, and you've sort of alluded to it with feedback, but how did the content contributors influence your creative process?
Um, so I would say that not only the creative process, but the content contributors have also greatly affected my like skill in the way that I do things. So, not I there's a couple of, workshop artists in terms of their technical skills with various software that I really look up to. So, if I can get feedback from them, it's, I take it on board a lot. There's also a few content contributors that I'm fans of that used to stream every now and then. So they would go on Twitch and stream their process, which for me was awesome because you know it's not only just getting feedback on how to improve your own work, but seeing how people iterate and improve on their work and the kind of processes that they go through is super handy. So that was kind of cool, like that aspect of it was really really good in terms of feedback.
Yeah. And do you believe that the content contributors negatively affect your work in any way?
Um, so for me, I'd say no, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other contributors you talk to that might say yes, based on the kind of drama and the kind of weird things that were going on a few years ago. People were kind of at each other's throats. I don't think there's many content. There's no real content contributor. Nothing goes on that negatively affects my work. I don't think so. I would say it's only positive. I've seen examples of what other people do and think, oh wow, that's really good. I want to ask them how did they achieve that. Like what did they do, and what's the best way to go about doing that. And for the most part, they tell you. Sometimes people want to keep their cards close to their chest, which is fine. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I wouldn't say that they negatively affect my work at all.
All right. And how do you personally add value to other workshop artists?
Um, so I've given feedback in the past. I would probably say I did a lot more when we were on the Polycount forum. Like, just I don't like the Skype chat. I find it very hard to kind kind of give feedback when there's multiple conversations going on at once. But yeah, on the Dota 2 poly count, I kind of would much rather tried to give help to newer artists when they were coming in. So, people would post their very first thing, and I try and help them out and give them advice. And like I'm actually working right now as a teacher for 3D art, so I still do that now. So, kind of helping new artists to cultivate the way that they do things. And even now, like in my classroom, a lot of the way that I do things, some of the skills that I teach my students are, directly taken from what I've seen other Dota 2 workshop artists do.
Okay. So sort of moving on to, we're still talking about your creativity, but do you believe that your creativity has been fully utilized to innovate Dota 2?
Um, yeah, I guess so. Like, I think there are some restrictions there in terms of what you can do. Like, there are some heroes that I would like to work on that are just not possible because of the tech restrictions we spoke about earlier. Um, I traditionally lean more towards environment art, and I would love to, contribute environment things to Dota 2. Like different maps or different towers or that kind of stuff. But that's just not possible. I guess it's the same thing for animators and visual effects artists. You don't really get that same representation in the workshop as just straight character modelers do. So, yeah, I think, I've been able to kind of, creatively, kind of put my mark on a couple of things, I guess.
Okay, so sort of building on that, do you believe that your creativity is controlled or hindered?
Um, no, I don't think so. I wouldn't say it's like hindered. I would say it's definitely controlled because you don't, often, there's like specific, you have to work within specific guidelines, there's, you know, various, so it's take for example, two different heroes. Arbitrarily, they're given different restrictions on what you can make for them. Sometimes those don't make sense in terms of the technology. So, in that sense, yes, you are restricted because, you can only go to a certain level with this hero because the restrictions are so tight. Whether or not that's because the hero's old and they haven't updated it, again, we have no idea because Valve doesn't communicate that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, and there's some heroes that you can't make stuff for. But apart from that, I think there is already an established kind of storyline and theme to lots of the characters, so you can't really stray beyond that, I think. So that's probably the only other thing that would restrict you is that there's already this kind of storyline behind the heroes.
Okay, and what could the community or Valve do to improve the situation? Does it need improving?
So Valve could definitely improve it by just opening up heroes for the workshop. We pretty much need that. We need, like they released a new hero a few months ago already on the workshop. Several heroes that were in Dota 2 when it first came out are still not on the workshop. So that could definitely be helped. Um, I think something else the community could do is to continue kind of coming up or like investigating these kind of storylines and stuff. Like whenever I do anything for Dota 2, I like to read up kind of extensively on the background of the character. There was a really good thread on the Dota 2 dev forum about all of the relationships between the characters and the storyline of not only them but their past and their history, and those kind of stories and kind of bits of information really helped me come up with some ideas. And that was pretty much just the community kind of pooling that information together. So that kind of stuff, keeping it kind of like a rich environment, it's always handy.
Okay, and so just in terms of your creativity and controlling the potential control, and just being creative, how important is
Hmm.
flexibility to you?
Yeah, it's super important. You have to be, if you want to be creative, you need to be able to be flexible. Um, so yeah, I'd say it's very important.
And do you feel that that flexibility is afforded, or do you think it's given to you?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think you know, there's there's a fine line between um the sets that or the items that just kind of tread the ground that's already been trodden, like, they kind of, they stay safe. And there's a couple of ones that kind of go extreme. And sometimes, you can be lucky and they can just hit the right mark with Valve, and they can be accepted. Um, but I think, like you can kind of be, you're allowed to be flexible and kind of and do what you want. But I think there is the downside to that is that often you will do something that, you go outside of your kind of comfort zone and you do something that you think is really good, and the community thinks it's really good, but it just goes into the void of Valve. You get no feedback. You have, like I have several things on the workshop that, over the course of the last few years have gotten really good feedback, really good votes, 80, 70% or whatever, like, quite positive, but you just get nothing from Valve, and you have no idea whether or not it's because they just didn't like it at all, or if there's one small thing that needed to be changed, like, oh, did you just need to make the colors work a little bit better, or does the size need to be slightly bigger? No idea. So, that's in that respect, yeah, it's kind of hard to be flexible because you don't get the feedback.
Okay. And so, sort of along those lines, do you believe that you can negotiate with those controlling your creative direction?
No, no, I'd say no. I don't feel like I can negotiate with Valve because there's no means to do that. Like, I have no idea who would be the first person to contact if I wanted to kind of adjust things. Like, I got feedback on a set that I did earlier this year, a couple of weeks ago, from a Valve employee with several things they wanted changed. But some of the feedback was kind of vague, didn't really make sense to me. So when I have time, I'm going to go to the Dota 2 workshop community rather than try and get more information from Valve. So I'll take Valve's feedback and go to the workshop community and ask, what do they mean? Because this makes no sense. And I will guarantee you that the workshop community will give me better kind of information about what I should do than Valve will. So yeah, I don't feel like there's an easy way to communicate with Valve at all.
Okay. And when you say you'll take it to the workshop community, will they give you feedback based on their experience? Or how will it work?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a set that I did, and they've got like three comments on it from a Valve employee. And basically, what I would do is take that set and those comments to the community, and I would expect that I would be, maybe at least one or two people would say, "Oh yeah, what they mean here is that you should do this, and you should do that, and you should change this." And that's really good because sometimes, like that feedback, like if I'm just in a bubble, that feedback, I look at my set and like I can't objectively make those decisions. Like, I've worked on it for weeks, and sometimes I'm just sick of looking at it. So I can't really think about what needs to be improved. So it's kind of nice to have that third set of eyes. So taking it to the two workshop community, and it happens all the time. You see stuff on there, and you see people kind of saying, oh, you should do this, and you should change this, or this needs to be like this, and that's pretty much what I would do when I have the time to change it.
Okay, great. So the final sort of questions are about motivation. So what
Hmm.
motivates you to be involved?
Um, well, I won't lie. The thing that motivated me to get involved first was the money. Um, but I actually enjoyed playing and watching Dota 2. So I really wanted to contribute something to a game that I really liked. And when I got the very first thing I ever made in, that just kind of snowballed motivation. I remember watching a tournament on Twitch. So I don't remember if it was the first thing I ever made. I think it was kind of like the second or third thing. It was in the chest for TI 3. Yeah, for TI 3. So, it was a big chest. It was, so that was awesome because, like that was motivating to think that Valve had chosen me for that. And then watching that tournament and seeing like a professional player have my item, even now that some of the stuff I made is quite old, seeing people, if I run into someone in a game and see them using something that I made, it's pretty cool. So I think that motivates me to, make more things, seeing the community kind of, accept it and, giving good feedback and people say that it's really cool.
Okay. So let me ask you, or what are your hopes and aspirations for your relationship with Valve?
Um, uh, I would hope that like it that it exists, I guess. Like, I would hope that it continues to exist. I think I think they are taking further steps to kind of improve their relationship with the community. The person who gave me feedback, I've seen their name mentioned in the workshop Skype chat quite often recently. So I think they definitely have someone now, maybe even multiple people who are working to improve their relationship with the workshop community and kind of talk and say, what they would do and how they would kind of, what things they would like changed. But for me personally, I would just like to, kind of always, continue to be in the running, have that kind of nice relationship with Valve where if I do make something that they like, that they can just get in touch with me and say if they like it and add it to the game. That's pretty much it.
Okay. So we sort of touched on it earlier, but what value are you creating for Valve?
Um, so I guess it's like, you know, it is pretty much monetary value. It's what you're creating for them, I think, in the long run, um, especially nowadays. So a lot of the things that get made are used for um, increasing prize pools of tournaments. So, you know, you make something, they like it, they add it, the prize pool gets bigger. So, they make money. So, I won't, cut any corners or anything. That's pretty much what the value is. It's you make them a lot of money. But I think aside from that, I think you help to improve um, the game itself as well. Like I think there's a lot of kind of stuff that gets made that can kind of help Valve come up with ideas for creating content. Like you add value to things like the Chinese New Year event. So you create this kind of content that's so they've done it the past few years. You create content that's themed around the Chinese New Year. Valve can advertise that. They can possibly even draw in more Chinese players because they're kind of promoting this kind of thing. So like that kind of stuff as well, I think is what the workshop provides is, you know, the monetary value for Valve, but also this value that lets them work on stuff behind the scenes, and we can kind of provide the cosmetic sales quotient of it while they work on other stuff. I would hope. I would hope that's what they're doing, behind the scenes.
Right. And do you believe that Valve values your contribution?
Yeah, I think they do. For me personally, I'm kind of small time, so they probably don't value mine as much as they value some of the like super big name workshop artists. But yeah, I think Valve kind of values all the contributions that they get. Um, Whether or not that means that they have the time to appreciate all of them, I don't know if that's true. But yeah, I would probably say that they value the work that I've put in. I mean, they invited me to go to TI4 for the work that I'd done. So I definitely say that that kind of, you know, that makes you feel valued when you get kind of like a big reward like that.
Okay. And we spoke earlier about the fact that you feel like you cannot negotiate with them. Do you believe that they listen to you?
Yeah, see, that's hard because, like, I feel like they would listen to us if we had any means of giving them, like, of communicating with them. So, like, I know Valve listens to the community because I see, people post up bugs or issues on Reddit, and then a few days later, it's fixed, depending on how serious it is. So I know they're there. I know that they're paying attention to the community. But the workshop community specifically, I feel like there's just no recourse. Like there's not a lot of that may not be true. There may be some workshop artists who know Valve employees and are chatting to them, every now and then, but I'm not one of them. So, I don't feel like, there's really any way to get feedback from them or even provide them with feedback. I mean, we've been trying, people have given feedback on how to improve the Dota 2 workshop, like the actual interface itself on Steam, for years now, and nothing's changed. Yet someone can go on Reddit and make a bug post about something, and within 24 hours it'll be fixed. So yeah, I don't think, I don't think that, they have deaf ears to our concerns. I just think that perhaps it's not where in terms of the kind of the wider Dota 2 community, the workshop artists are an infinitely small portion of the wider Dota 2 workshop community. So unfortunately, we don't have a big say in what goes on.
Okay. And my final question is, do you feel empowered by Valve?
Um, yeah, I think I do. So, I have, I went to TI4 because of Valve, asking me to go, which was awesome. I got to, travel to Seattle and, attend the international, meet other workshop artists in person, get the VIP kind of experience. So that was great. I, um, I do a lot of work now with students in my class based on, kind of what I've learned from doing through the Valve workshop. Um, and yeah, I guess kind of, the money that I earned from the workshop. I was living in Canada at the time, and that pretty much directly allowed me to move my wife and myself back to Australia, and get married. So yeah, that was pretty empowering. Thanks, Valve.
That's great. So
Yeah.
my final sort of thing is, do you have anything else that you would like to add? Do you have any other comments or questions for me? Anything like that?
Um, I'm not sure. Like, I think, yeah, it's definitely kind of an interesting topic, and I think you'll probably get. I'd be interested in to kind of read the paper when you're done because I think I'd like to see what other people say about the workshop. Like I said, I'm kind of, I'm small time compared to other people. I kind of, just do my own thing and sit in the back and don't really make a fuss. But there's a lot of other people who, I think were much more insanely successful than I am, and they probably have vastly different experiences than I do. But I would probably say that, in like just going back to that, the communication with Valve, I do think it's a little bit insulting, just a little bit, that we have gone out of the way to not only at face value contribute a lot of money to that company, but in terms of the aesthetics and the appeal and possibly new customers and players that have been drawn in because, you know, probably not drawn in, but continue to play the game because of the sets and stuff. That we don't have like at least a community manager or anything like that. There's like no one that we can talk to. There was a Dota 2 workshop artist who is now employed by Valve, but whether or not that means, he or she will become some sort of person that we can talk to, I have no idea. just based on kind of what happened at the workshop stations when we were at the international, I kind of get the sense that they just kind of wing it. They don't really know what's going on. Like you show up here and then, oh, you're meant to be over there, or this is not happening this year, or what are we actually doing? Can we get feedback on this? And there was kind of this divide between artists who attended TI4 and artists who were invited at TI4. So I attended. I wasn't part of the like VIP group. I didn't get to go on the tour of Valve. I didn't get to go to this like fancy dinner they had. So that kind of stuff, I think, as much as Valve is awesome, when they do when they do shit like that, it really pisses you off because they're essentially trying to create this open level playing field. I mean, it's not level because people have much better skills, but that aside, it's this kind of open environment where everyone can contribute and everyone's equal. And then, they went out of their way to not make everyone equal and to give people special treatment. And I think they probably learnt their lesson on that because that has not happened in the last year or so. So I think, in that respect, the Valve, I think if you had done this paper maybe a year and a half ago, you would have gotten some really different answers. But I think now it's this very, it's kind of calm. It's very slow. I think a lot of people have been turned off of it because I think the big gold rush period is kind of ended more or less. But, like when I was getting into it and I was kind of getting successful, I had another friend of mine who was an artist and she asked me, should I get involved in the workshop? And I said, yeah, like go ahead, like make some stuff. And she got one thing accepted and she was super pumped. But if she came to me now and asked, I would say, no, don't bother with it. Like, it's that I think the golden age of the workshop has kind of died down a fair bit now.
Okay, well, thanks. I mean, those are some amazing insights and really helpful. So I really appreciate your time, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for everything. It's actually been a great interview, and I'll be happy to share my paper with you, provided I can get just ethical clearance from the university.
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah. And if you have any like follow-up questions or anything else that you need, you can just hit me up on Skype and I'll be glad to help out.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, keep well. Hey, all the best.
Awesome. Thank you. See ya.